If you like the intimacy of our conversations, if you're inspired by it, if you're learning how to speak sex with us, please consider supporting our podcast. It's free content on every streaming app, and it's also free of ads. We do not want our conversation to be affected or corrupted by the outside influence of advertisers. We want to keep it intimate and real, and for that, we need your help. If you go to speaksexpodcast.com, or if you look at the bottom of the profile page on your streaming app, or if you go on the Speak Sex Podcast Instagram and hit the link tree, the support button will pop up right away. Consider making a monthly donation of like $1, $3, $5 a month. Just put it on your credit card the way that you might give money to your political candidate. It's the same concept, and that would keep us going much longer. It will keep us growing, buying equipment, building a team. And if you do not want to commit to supporting us with a minimum amount every month, please consider donating at same places. There is the donate button, and then you can make a one-time contribution through PayPal toward our growth and our survival and our becoming a movement and our joint liberation. So support us so we can help set you free. And thank you. Love you. We will love you just as much, whether or not you help us. And Speak Sex. Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I'm your sex whisperer here on the podcast world. And my guests today will discuss with me a little more about sex education, what is available out there, and how we can become more aware, open, and conscious in our practice, vary our practice, open up to sex, and find the ways to love ourselves, our bodies, and our lovers' bodies outside, like the cliche, beyond, not outside, but beyond the cliche that, we kind of all like take for granted or see on porn sites or, wherever we find our sex knowledge, since there's no such thing as sex ed in school, in the world. Anyway, so thank you for coming, Avril and Maya. So Avril Louise Clark is a sexologist and sex educator. She's from Miami, and she works for the Sex Academy, which is the first academy of sexuality in Spain. It's based in Barcelona, but it provides like sex education in cities around Spain. It was founded in 2012, and it gives weekly workshops, and it's officially launching here in Miami in January, which is exciting.
Yes.
So we will find out a little bit about what like the sex curriculum of a sex academy is, what it involves, and why you might want to, take some time and take workshops. And then my other guest is Maya for simple, Rodriguez. She was born in Bosnia. She was there for the Civil War. She has traveled the world since and graduated from University of Virginia. And now she's a wife and mom to 3 children here in Miami, in Kendall, where she has also opened a holistic healing place called Maya's Place, and which offers, again, kind of like workshops and lessons for finding a more evolved relationship with your body. So she's a Reiki master, spiritual healer, motivational speaker, all that. And she also published the book Grenades as Lullabies, which is her memoir from her childhood in Bosnia. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my first, something that I always feel is important to begin with, especially for listeners who are relatively new, is that we're doing this because we do not ever learn about sex at any stage of our lives, except in the sense of forbidden, of no, right?
Yes.
So we're born innocent, and therefore innocently sexual.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
sex is one of like the few fundamental needs of our species that haven't changed, no matter how, much like civilized bullshit we add on to our culture.
Absolutely.
But like sex is real. It's been there from the beginning. We need it to keep existing.
Right.
So it's like drinking and eating and like going to the bathroom and sleeping. It's one of like the most basic needs that we share with all of our animal brothers and
Correct.
sisters. And we have like complicated. We've complicated every gift of the gods, including, sex. So, the more our mind has gotten into the experience of sex, the more we've like messed it up. But if we were to go back to like the prelingual state when we were tiny people, tiny new people, we're all that way when we're new to the world, and that was the same 5,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, or 200 years ago, right? So the way that then we were socialized has changed depending on the culture, the era. Sometimes much harder for women. Recently, a little better, but overall. There is a lot of social bondage and social restriction that takes place for reasons that if we all, sit down and think about them dispassionately and just logically, as if it weren't us, but like something else that we were interested in or studying, they would make no sense. So for reasons that make no sense, if you forget about, your like upbringing and God and right and wrong and, what people will say and all that other stuff, like were we to remove all that extra.
The subconscious programming that we come up with.
Right.
Yeah,
not so subconscious. The programming.
The programming.
It hits us on our subconscious, yes, because we're so young.
It's there.
But it's like, it's not like, it's extreme and like in your face.
Absolutely. And it's just the way how the subconscious is, you think you're that way, but you're not understanding that it is all that influx of everything on how you approach things.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so it's
and so all of us made that transition from being open to being naked and open to, being touching and feeling things and feeling hunger for food, feeling thirsty for water, feeling hunger for intimacy, to, learning language.
Yeah.
And then language is the first controlling mechanism. And then learning the moral values, the signifiers that go with the signs, which are the words. And all of our early education, so let's say from age 2, I guess, until, most formative until age like 5 or 6, but then everything after that as well has been based on no. Don't do that, don't, sit with your legs crossed, don't open your legs, don't, whatever, don't, it's not ladylike, it's not, godly, it's not proper.
Correct.
It's shameful. You will be shunned. So even the fact that we are here, 3 women,
Talking about sex.
right, talking about sex, working in fields related to
absolutely.
sex, means that we, individually, each one of us has had to overcome that.
Definitely.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we are having sex. We're talking about sex,
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that like that's what we do all day long, but there are so many misconceptions,
correct,
because of the lack of education and also a voice.
Exactly.
So the reason for the podcast, is that I feel that what I call speaking sex is a language for sexuality that we haven't developed yet, and finding words and familiarity with the experience of discussing what we do sexually with each other is the first step to the actual sexual revolution.
Definitely.
Because what happened, like with the early, feminists, I mean, they did what they did so much for us. They found the clitoris for us. I mean, they did so much. They told us we could actually get or hope to get equal pay. I mean, it's like a huge amount of progress that has been made. But on the one-to-one intimate level, at the level of what happens after the seduction, after the foreplay, after the verbal consent, which we just recently achieved thanks to Me Too.
Thank God.
And then what happens when the lights go out? That is still no man's land.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, strange.
Right. Yeah. And I feel that, in a way, because it's something that the patriarchy, the system, the culture, the society has not over-regulated like everything else, it's actually prime for us to take it over and say, okay, this is how we should be talking when we're naked and exposed or feeling exposed and having sex, and we don't need to pretend like we're taken over by some animal nature and can't speak, can only moan and, have to continue insanely passionately until one or both orgasm.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, hopefully both orgasm, unless one gives up and fakes it. And we know,
Stop faking
we know which
orgasms,
gender that
ladies.
would be.
Please. My goodness.
I know.
The worst.
And the reason women fake orgasms is that they feel guilty.
Yes.
They feel guilty asking for giving direction.
Yes.
They feel guilty, having the man work a tiny bit. It's not even work. It should be extreme pleasure, right?
Yes.
But still, we don't think that. We think what we do is pleasing others, and that's right.
Yeah.
But we feel we don't deserve to, to be pleased. And I don't know, the fact that so many women still fake orgasms is just criminal, but they do. We do. I mean, I don't, but we do as women.
There's so many.
Yeah. I think that's a huge issue in itself.
Yeah, it's a huge
right?
issue in
I think
itself.
it also comes down to, as what you were saying, the point of this podcast is to open up that communication, because we need to find the words. We need to have open communication in the bedroom, outside the bedroom, in a workshop, in a class. We need to make it more normalized to talk about sex. Because if we're able to sit here on this couch today and talk about sex and use the word clitoris, use the word orgasm, pleasure, we're going to be more likely be able to use it in the bedroom too with our partners. I mean, I don't like to use the term in the bedroom. I think you can do it wherever you want, right? But
well, in the proverbial bedroom,
on the couch, in the car,
whatever, on the kitchen table,
whatever it goes,
It just opens up that floodgate, right? It's so liberating to be able to talk about sex, even just with a friend or a partner or your family, your children.
And again, our fear is, I think that this comes back to the reason the patriarchy has controlled women for so many thousands of years, which is, women are the sex gender, right? Women have this magic of giving birth, men don't. And so how do we somehow control this ineffable, uncontrollable, superhuman gift.
Gift,
right. So I think that one of the ways is to, there have been myriad ways, the language we speak, the laws, the ways we think are all geared in that direction, right? To in a sense, protect civilization from sex. But especially in the sexual practice, the way that this is presented is when you're sexual, you're not you. You're taken over by like the instinct, the lowly instinct, the lowly animal side that like can't code or can't use the ATM, whatever. I don't know. So that's like the split.
Yeah.
So it's like our like mind that has achieved so much, like this fucking Condo Canyon on a fake beach that the U.S. Corps of Engineers created.
Right.
But, and then like the lowly vagina, right? That just wants to like, have a good time and have fun and maybe make babies.
I think it's such a big thing because, and I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is just so much deeper than just the word sex. Because what happens is that intimacy is we don't speak to each other anymore in general about anything.
Right. Yeah.
So what a better, better subject than be like, okay, let's start with sex. And the thing about I think is this vulnerability point of view that nobody wants to open up and just go with it. And yet that is the liberating. That's the liberation of you because it's not only in the bedroom. Couples don't speak to each other in general. And it's just, and it's, I feel it's connected to everything. They're not energetically connecting with discussing anything. There's things open to assumptions. There are things open to, and nobody's communicating. Of course, people are not going to get along. Of course, you're not going to come because you know what? Maybe you need to go to the left a little bit. Maybe you like to watch a little porn. Maybe you
That's
like
so
to
funny.
see something.
Can I say something? I mean, it's always to the left for me.
I mean, so is mine. And I'm glad to be to open this. And of course, I'm from Europe, so you're telling me about naked. I mean, I grew up watching my uncles and moms and dads on a nudist beach all day long, and that was okay.
Yeah.
Like, what's the problem? You have it, I have it. But it's this, the control aspect of it. And I think it's so important what you're doing to understand that this is not only about sex. This is about just us in general evolving and being more connected to ourselves and our partners and our friends and anybody else because we just don't communicate because of supposedly
we don't communicate and it's all fear-based.
It's fear-based, being vulnerable. Okay, so understanding that your energy cannot be affected unless you allow it to be affected.
Right. Yeah.
And it all goes down to that, So I think it's very important that we're saying this and saying, yes, I like it to the left. Let's go with it. I mean, that's...
Well, one of my, I have like 3 goals for this podcast and this, general kind of movement. And one is exactly that, to become more and more comfortable just speaking about what you like sexually. Especially while you're in it, like not with your girlfriends, over a glass of wine, but when you're in it, naked and having it, being able to make that transition and go back to like sober state, cognizant state, and speak, and then go back to sexual state, and not really even, I call it back now, because that's how we think of it. The same way that the language tells us, like the body is it, I am I, but my body is it. But in fact, this is all I, right? So the sex and the thinking about it and speaking should all be one. But it's harder to explain because that's not how we're wired. The whole setup is not. So one goal is speaking sex, and I suggest that people could just say, you want to speak sex? Like introduce it this way, let's speak sex, and that is a mark, the way like in kink or in BDSM, they have like code words.
Right, your little code
word.
Yes.
And the second goal is to understand that our like identity, our sense of who we are in the world, should have nothing to do with our sexual practice.
Correct.
With what we do, alone with a partner for fun.
Absolutely.
Right.
But that's exactly where the confusion comes, right? So, like, you may like someone, and you want to say, if you're interested in me, like, I'd like to have sex with you, but you don't, because you feel like if the answer is no, it's a rejection of all of you.
All of you.
Right.
That's exactly what I mentioned. What I mentioned, it's like, what does whatever have to do with your value, when your system, when you're energetic.
Yeah.
And that's because the society has tied all those things in order to be able to control,
right.
in a grand scheme of things of the value. So the more we are valuable and we feel inferior, the more things we're going to try to do to enhance other things.
Right.
And that's,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like it becomes a huge, not just moral judgment, but a huge judgment of your place in the world. What the fuck?
Who put those two things together? I mean,
it makes no sense.
Yes.
But even another example, you're having sex with a guy and he loses his heart on, and it should be so simple. But it's not, because this whole manhood is involved.
Everything. Yes,
and then you don't want to say things.
You don't want to offend anyone.
You feel like you would offend him.
Yeah. Well, I think also.
Why the fuck would that be offensive, though?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the idea, of course, when we were bringing it back to men versus women in the bedroom, men are seen as the more sexual ones, right? The ones that are going to get the pleasure, they're the ones that are most likely going to have the orgasm. So when they are challenged with something like erectile dysfunction or difficulties, it's emasculating to them, right? I feel like we're always protecting the man in the bedroom.
Right.
Oh yeah, we're always protecting the man in the bedroom.
Okay, let's figure this out. Let's do something about this, or
have a break, whatever. No big deal.
Switch to oral sex.
Yes.
There are hundreds of things you can say, but we don't, because we're afraid we're going to hurt their feelings.
Exactly.
And make it worse.
There's so many.
And here's another thing that happens. So, and I've, because I'm very open, obviously, as you can tell, but also what happens is that, oh my God, okay, so now you lost your heart on. Oh my God, something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, so now we're going into this whole circle of just
I'm not attractive enough.
I'm not attractive enough. I guess you don't. And there's so many different things, and we're just completely complicated. Like you said at the beginning, completely took it out of another realm of anything to do with anything. And here we are, we're just unhappy with all of it. So it's incredible how we need to just,
And that's what we call spectatoring, right? That idea that we are so detached to the experience of sex while we're even having it. So, for example, those thoughts that come into your mind, am I not attractive enough, and things are going wrong? Do I look okay? What is this position? You're worrying about the other partner. We are not in the moment during the sex
at all.
When we're having that, we are having almost like an out of body experience, right? We are. We're worried so much about all these thoughts that are going to our mind that we're not even paying attention to the fact that we're in the middle of a sexual experience.
Mindfulness, right?
Mindful sex, right?
Yes.
But that's because we're not integrated. That's because we have that dichotomy, between our thinking, feeling, cognizant, mind, soul, whatever, and then the poor body that, we've been taught that's just this, we're stuck with it.
It's not us.
It's not, okay. So self-integrating and becoming whole and understanding that, you are your vagina and, whatever else, all of it, your clitoris, your pancreas.
Is yours.
Instead of the compartmentalizing, that happens in our mind, that is super healing. But to go back to that second goal, it's really important to be conscious basically all the time in order to rewire the way we function sexually. Be conscious as much as we can of the tendency to conflate, sexual activity with sense value, sense worth, overall identity, all of that, if we could separate the two, the way that, whether or not I bike well, or whether or not I drive well, or whether or not I'm a good swimmer, or I don't know, how many languages I speak, or all that stuff, doesn't really, shame me. It doesn't affect my overall sense of myself in the world, right? So why should, whether I like it vaginally or anally, or I like to get whipped, or, I come 10 times, or I can't come one way or another, or I'm afraid of something sexually. And why does that have to do with the rest of who I am? Not the rest of who I am as a person in the world.
Absolutely.
Nothing. And also all of that changes, right?
Course.
So the same way that we change what we like to eat, We change our tastes in music.
Yeah.
We change our tastes in sex. And again, none of that should have to do with our sense of identity. Like, the food you eat, unless you're like fanatic, extremely fanatic, your food choices don't affect who you are in the world.
Right.
Your movie choices don't affect who you are in the world, right?
We're constantly evolving.
It's only sex that we've, sex we've taken it, put it in that category all its own, and it affects so much of of our of our judgment. It's all about judgment, So if we could divorce it from judgment, that's the freedom right there.
That's exactly what the best thing. And this is why I opened my place, because a lot of things that I see on continuous basis is just shame and base of judgment.
Right.
And if we, like you said, divorce it, that is the starting of the freedom, because every time there's judgment involved, you automatically want to enhance that judgment. And every time you judge, you enhance. And it doesn't matter what you do, you're always going to judge it, and you always want to enhance it. So people don't understand. They get caught up in this hamster wheel of judgment and enhancement, instead of just being and allowing it to be, however that is, and then understanding to have that balance. And that happens with everything in general. It's this continuous, and the brain is going to want to take you that way if you allow it. If you just sit back and say, wait a minute, I don't need to do anything and be anything. Let me just be me. And that's how, in turn, all of your body energy starts being itself. That's why the minute you start thinking about crap, let's say if you're going to have sex, of course it's not going to be as good enough. Just be. And allow the moment, allow just being, understanding what it is, and allow that to be exactly how it is, without judgment, divorcing the judgment.
Right. Yeah.
Because I believe that there's two approaches to everything in life, right? I think it's either through fear or through love. And with sex, it doesn't have to be you love that partner.
Correct.
I don't think that sex can be anything. It doesn't have to be with love. It can be a one night stand. It can be something of passion. It can be something mind filled instead of mindful. Right. But if
we could get rid of fear, put love aside for a second, because it's an overused word, especially in America today, like post New Age. I'm so over love.
Okay, so
of course I love everyone. We want to love everyone. We don't want war or conflict or But we women kind of are good at loving. Sometimes better than we should be. Exactly.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, we put everyone before us because we're
the caretakers.
We know how to be mothers.
We are.
But fear, like being able to let go of fear in everything we do. Can you imagine?
Ooh,
we have so much. It will be honestly.
I can't imagine.
And I see a lot of my clients. I don't know if you do as well in your business, and I'm sure when you're painting, like. When you're like, are you looking at how is he gonna know? You paint.
When you're painting, there is no fear.
Same thing. So I've seen that in my clients. A lot of people, when they're like, it's gonna be there, but you can control it and say, no, not today, fear. Not today. I choose not to.
Just don't make your decisions.
And not to make the decisions on that.
Right.
You see, I've seen just incredible. And the beautiful thing about it is that there is enough love. There's enough abundance. There's enough everything for everybody. You are the one who's holding yourself back, and fear is the poison.
Exactly.
Is the recipe for that.
Right.
And most of the times when you go ahead and you do things anyways that scare you, it's always so much better than you think. Liberating. I don't know how many times I've at the beginning when I was doing workshops, I was so scared. At the end, I would always be like, this is so great. It was so great. Even just meeting one person that you were supposed to meet or coming here today, you might be scared. And in the end, you realize, it wasn't that bad. I did it. So it's like, why does fear hold us back from so much, including in our sex life, communication, things like that? Nothing bad's going to come from it. Not as bad as you make up in your mind.
Correct.
Right? We are all up here all the time. And if we just communicate, positive sexual communication, of course.
Yeah.
And fuck it.
Yeah.
And fuck it.
We got this.
Well, I have a meditation I do, which I want to share. It's a general meditation, but it helps, I guess, I think it helps with sex as well. And I ask myself, who is thinking that thought? When I have thoughts that would come from fear or create anxiety or whatever, I just stop and say, who is thinking that thought? And it's not me. It's never me. It's never like, my soul or my essence. It's not. It's the outer world.
Correct.
It's not my thought.
Yeah.
It's never that. I'm so happy you mentioned that. It's never that, because I do a lot of hypnosis and all of that, and I teach that a lot, which I mentioned earlier. It's subconscious programming. So you are programmed to look at things a certain way, and what happens is that within that program, then you start allowing other things, influences to come. So those voices are most of the time not yours, okay? Your soul does not want conflict. Your soul does not want any of those. What it is that what we need to do is, like you said, through meditation or just mindful timing, sit back and understand and separate those two. And a lot of times you'll hear it. It's your mom. It's somebody else. It's or something. And really is that, but you integrated that as you. So now, because you think it's you, now we have to, act that way and think that way. So yes, it is exactly that. It's subconscious, programming with outside influences that, of course, contribute to that because you're taking it, right? So, and that's, once you learn to do this, and this is the most important part where I see the most change in all my clients, is when they're able to be like, take a minute. Is this me, or is this some subconscious programming that I've acquired? And then a lot of times they're like, holy shit, now this is what's coming from. Wait a minute. Okay. Now I can kind of step back and maybe do things differently and think about it differently. It's taking that minute in meditation, taking that minute of being just, wait a minute, which voice is this? Okay.
That's really interesting, because I've always heard about the voice in your head, but I've never thought about it as being different voices. Like you were saying, society, my mom, things like that. I've heard of it, being able to separate yourself from those voices, but never that it could be different ones.
They're definitely, for sure, different ones.
Interesting.
And that's how through hypnosis, a lot of times, and just in mindful thinking, we find out, and they're like, oh my God, that's exactly.
Right.
But it's so integrated in you, you're not thinking that's, but you can. There is a way.
The basic work, and it's very simple, is to reprogram, right? Rewire the neural pathways. And the way to do it is to expose ourselves to different options. So the main reason to take the workshops and do sessions, study, learn, practice, take hypnosis, all of that, is to experience in safe space this different thing that otherwise we would be afraid of because it's so unknown.
Correct.
So when you first experience it in a safe way, that it's a controlled environment, it's not going to be just like you and another, naked going at it. Then, you feel like you overcome that fear of what you don't know, and you realize how simple it is, and then it's much easier to just, actually practice it in your sexual life.
Definitely.
Yes.
But it's important to remember that, our brain has formed our way of handling things in order to protect us. And it's very arbitrary because it was set up when we were super young. So, something might have felt as a rejection in our childhood. And then we decided that if we avoid it at all costs, we won't be hurt again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
that's how it happens.
there is no logic. It doesn't apply anymore in your 30s.
Correct. But we hold on to it.
But we hold on to it.
Because we don't know anything else.
Right. Because that's the last thing that worked.
Because that's it went through.
Yeah.
I always tell people, you're not in a survival mode anymore.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
start living.
Yeah. That's very good.
I like that.
Your that's not serving you any longer. Let's start something else. Think of it differently. And we're able to. We're literally computers that can recode and reprogram. It's perspective. This is why so many people can look at the same piece of art, the same thing, and either love it, like it, hate it. But what is it? Which one is it? They're all right because it's their perspective. So you can always change that for your improvement, for your empowerment. And that's the beauty of people getting there, understanding that,
It takes practice, though. Like
exactly.
You're saying, the rewiring, it takes practice.
It takes practice. Oh,
yeah. It does.
To take
it takes commitment.
It takes commitment to yourself, to your time.
Absolutely.
And then
so tell us a little about mindful sex.
Right. So the rewiring that you were talking about. So when we do that rewiring, actually we're able to reduce the amount of cortisol in our brains, right? And so cortisol is what's created what we think of as stress, right? And evolutionarily speaking, is that a word?
Yep,
Did I make that up? Okay. If we have so much cortisol going on, so much stress, like if we're running and a saber-toothed tiger is chasing after us, right? What's the last thing you're thinking about? Is your sexual side. Your blood is all rushing towards your brain. All you're thinking about is survival mode, like you talked about, survival mode. And we don't leave that time for our sexual side anymore. If we're always up here, stressed, and this,
the fight or flight mode,
is not a saber-tooth tiger anymore. It's your job, it's your family, it's your finances, it's your car issues. It's all about that rewiring and being in the moment. But it doesn't happen right away. You have to work on it little by little. It could be brushing your hair in the morning, brushing your teeth, driving to work. You start to just say, okay, instead of already being in the office, I'm going to choose to be here right now.
I'm going to choose to listen to Speak Sex podcast.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes. Educate yourself. Listen to things. Yes.
Driving to work and hearing these women talk about the clitoris.
Yes. Woohoo. Awesome.
Anyway, so how do you practice, like practically? I'm asking for, practical examples of
like a mindful
sex practice. Yes.
Right. So a perfect example would be something that we call maintenance sex, which I think we need another word for it. So if anyone out there can think of another word for maintenance sex, I'd love to know. But setting aside time for your erotic self, right? This could be with you or with a partner. It could be 2 to 3 hours on a Friday night from 8 to 11 o'clock, 8 to 10 o'clock, whenever you want. And to just have that time to really make that your erotic time. If you're alone, you don't have a partner, rub lotion on your body, spend that time together with yourself. Masturbation, buy toys for yourself, maybe dress up in lingerie, whatever makes you feel sexy and in the moment. Also doing simple body scans, right? Laying down, focusing in on the room that you're in, wherever you're going to be having sex, right? And then with a partner, of course, you can do the same thing. You can set that time aside, phones outside, out of the room, no distractions. So then you really have
What
that
about
moment.
mindful sex in the sense of, taking a few minutes first to put yourself in, meditative space, meaning like breath work. Kind of like clean up and detox before you go into sex space.
I think it's extremely important.
Body scan could be good, but then also, the typical body scans is when you start, and you're like, you start from your toe or your head down, and you go, and you become aware of every single body part. But normally we'll go up our legs, we skip our genitals, right? We keep going up. So actually, including your genitals into that body scan, your anus, your vagina, everything. So you start to zone in on those parts that we normally choose or not choose to ignore. Right.
I think that's very important. And what you mentioned, I think putting mindfulness in general, but yes, it's what happens is that a lot of times, even if we set aside some of the erotic time or whatever it is, we're going in and be like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this tomorrow. But like, even if you're whatever you're doing, your mind is there. So I agree that I feel like, scanning your body, but sitting there and going, okay, brain, yes, I have to do this and this and this. Sure, yes, I'm giving you the 5 minutes. Now, thank you very much for the next 2 hours. I shall be here. Breath work, yes. Mindfulness of just breathing or just getting yourself start thinking about different chakras. There's going to be like 5-minute meditation can really do a huge change.
Yeah, I think so too.
I've noticed a huge change in that, because even if you are, and your mind it wants to go places, even if you're middle of, doing stuff, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have to call my mother or whatever. And you're like, why am I thinking of this? This is crazy.
Well, what is orgasm? Orgasm, in my opinion, is sustaining focus.
Correct.
So that's exactly what meditation is.
You're meditating.
Right.
It's the highest form of meditation. Because it's when you're not thinking about anything. You're experiencing the orgasm.
Exactly.
And the coolest part is another thing about having the mindful sex, right, is it's no goal sex.
Correct.
So you go into it thinking,
and feel.
We might not even have an orgasm. Because most of the time when we have sex, what do? We do it.
We push and push and push.
It's all hot.
And then we're like,
it's goal oriented. Expectations.
So goal oriented. It's ridiculous.
So there's
and it's not, and it's goal oriented. I mean, in the heteronormative world, it's goal oriented for the guy to come, So unless the male practices some sort of like, again, meditation, self-control, the moment he comes, even if she has come or even if he makes her come after orally, a woman is like wired so she can have 10, 20, basically endless orgasms. Yeah. And also a woman can have like 7 different types of orgasms. But, you need time, you know. And if your focus, if the couple's focus is on the guy ejaculating, and then he falls asleep, actually, like the traditional sex is not successful. It's much better to be open-minded and not think about coming and try new things. But you can't try new things unless you talk about it.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll just do the same thing over and over that worked, and maybe works, but it works the same way. And what happens after 1,000 times?
Yeah, you got to
right. Yeah. You have to be able to speak and say, hold on, let's take a break. Can I wear this? Can we do this? Change it up without feeling, oh my God, we're going to lose the feel, the high, and he's gonna lose his hard on, or I don't know, I'll dry up or something, and then we will be out of that, place. So I might as well skip it and just go
through it.
Right.
Yeah. So I feel that meditation, a meditation practice, is good for your sexual practice. Because I used to do meditation where I would sit and stare at the flame.
That's nice. That's a good one.
Right, for me it was nice.
Visual. It depends.
Fire is one of the elements. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I that's when it came to me. It just came to me, even though I was trying to not be thinking of anything at all.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. But it came to me that that's how I am when I have sex, And so then when I was in sex space, I kind of noticed that focus. And it's a very similar, it's kind of like an inward. You forget who you are. You forget your, whether you're a mom or whether you're a wife or whether you're a daughter or whether you're a dog owner or
your identity.
Right. Your taxes, all that bullshit, which is so liberating.
Oh my God, yes.
Right, which you also forget in meditation. So you forget that, and then you focus. At least we women. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a man, but we women go inward, right? So it's a very similar kind of third eye and G-spot or clit or whatever. Yes. But it's a very similar intense focus, and you sustain it for a long time, much longer than you do in other activities, right? And so that's the same thing that happens in meditation. That's what you're trying to sustain that without allowing,
outside influences.
Exactly. So our place of orgasm comes from that same focus, which for me as a creative is also the focus that I like to find in order to create, as an artist.
Exactly.
Right. Or a writer, you go into that space,
Absolutely.
that internal,
your soul, your energy instead of all the, learn things, it's that.
Exactly. So, and that's one of the beautiful things about, sex. If you, don't do it simply for sport.
Recreationally.
But recreation is good too. But So, so mindfulness, and then the other reason to take workshops is to vary your sex life, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what do you teach? Give us a little bit of the curriculum.
So I'm going to speak about
Sex Academy.
Sex Academy as a whole, right? So we're extremely sex positive academy. We always create very inclusive environments. Like you said, it all starts with communication. So we want to create a space where everyone feels welcome to talk about what they want. And some of our topics have been, we really don't hold back.
Good.
We do workshops on finding your G-spot, learning how to squirt, right? All about squirting. It could be, we do ones for men as well, ones for women.
Men who squirt?
Not men who squirt, but men who are interested in the topic
of
squirting.
Like
getting the woman to squirt.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the hope is that would become like a regular education instead of like an exotic.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
Especially for young people, because in my experience, what happens is it takes people a long time to actually take these classes or coaching sessions or whatever.
Yeah.
So you go through your teenage years, which are the most complicated sexually, because you have these like
years,
brand new sexual bodies, but your mind isn't fully developed. You don't know what to do with them, but they're there. You want to use them because your hormones, your hormones are there, but like your prefrontal lobe isn't formed, so it's just a complete like mess, and you do your best.
It's a mess.
You do like what your friends tell you to do,
or what porn tells you to do.
The boys do the porn, the girls do the friends,
and that's another thing. And I think what you mentioned about cannabis, I think it's what it does. It goes back to like the meditation and all that. It literally like zones you out of that. Everything else that's happening, so you can actually focus on the feeling of it, which is why
I most personally I recommend more like the lubes or and the reason is that I think it's important for us slowly to learn how to have sober sex.
Correct. Yes.
Because a lot of the of the trouble, so speaking sex for me is part of that.
Yes. I agree with you.
Because what happens is because we have such a difficult time with it, we tend to like get drunk or get high, but then we're not present.
The disconnect.
Correct. And also what happens when you're not present is it's much more likely to misunderstand one another. And then you have like sexual assault or, you get super drunk and then you lose agency. Or super high, and you can lose agency.
Definitely.
So it especially as women, as like feminist women now, but for everyone, if we learn slowly to have sober sex, but not only like with our partner of 10 years, with a new person.
With a new,
right.
Can you imagine? Yes. You don't want to take that edge off, right?
Yeah, but you don't have to take, there shouldn't be an edge.
There shouldn't be.
There shouldn't be an edge.
So the more you practice that, I feel, it's important. And it's also important because then you can communicate more clearly, verbally.
Right.
So like it's less likely for the guy to hear no and think it means yes.
Correct.
Or it's less likely to like complicate all
things.
that and get into like date rape, for example.
Correct.
Because if you don't consume or drink or eat stuff, that you're given, that date rape doesn't happen. If you're more comfortable with words and kind of like lucid, then sexual assault doesn't happen. Because if the guy is saying something about work or whatever people do, but then his hand is up your skirt and you have a facility with the language of sex and you also are sober enough to not kind of like giggle and hope things will get better.
Go away,
Then you can speak up and, not feel that you're like offending him or offending yourself or, just speak up from a place of comfort. And say, take your hand out. I'm not comfortable with this. Are we entering, sex space? Are you proposing to me? Do you want
use
this
words?
to turn? Use the words.
Yes.
Take your hands off. Use the words, and I'll tell you yes or no, or how I feel, or we can talk about it, and and then learn how to, incorporate kindness, to say no, right? So no doesn't sound like the way we're used to it, but all of that requires a familiarity and a comfort with the language and some capacity for being sober.
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely something that's very
that's
clear. Nothing is an excuse to be
100%.
For non-consensual sex. Not even marijuana, not a cocktail, nothing.
Right,
nothing,
exactly.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Even if you're sober, there's some people who just they don't know the rules. Like let's hypothetically say that guy reaching up a girl's skirt. I think it all starts with sex education. If we have these conversations as children and we give this education at schools or at workshops or wherever, then these things are less likely going to happen. Because people don't know how to use their words to ask for
in a sexual context. Yeah,
in sexual context.
And
then the girl doesn't know if she should be flattered or offended.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it's easy to know because you know how you feel about it, and 99.9% chances are you feel shit about it.
Exactly.
So it's important to agree on it and remember it in advance that however awkward it feels in the present moment, if it's something that you're not clear about and you don't know how you feel about it, you're only going to feel much worse
definitely
about it later.
Yeah.
So just turn it into a no and stop it.
We can't let someone else's inappropriate actions make you later feel bad about yourself.
Right.
It wasn't what you did.
And
you
we can't let men's desire, unilateral, one-sided desire, be the determining factor. No,
100%. You have to. That has to be for sure. I was thinking more. We were talking once you're already in the process.
Right. Yeah.
The only reason I was saying that is because I deal with a lot of middle age to later, and they're just having a hard time exploring their sexuality, being married or not. Especially when they're married for 20 years. It's because they're continuously here, like you said. So it's almost like with maybe the help, and I'm not certainly encouraging in one way or another. I feel like whatever works for you. But yes, more in order to show them that it's possible, sometimes they need to have that wait a minute, I'm not thinking of anything, and it's possible to feel this way, and I can naturally achieve it. But sometimes it's so hard when they're here. And I'm telling you, a lot of people out there that come see me are flight or fight all day long. I mean, it's incredible how stressed they are, how much they feel they have on their plate. Certainly, they're not going to have sex. They're not going to even want to have sex, which is usually what ends up happening with a lot of my women. They're like, sex, whatever. That's the last thing on my mind. Why? Because there's just so much going on here, and they literally don't know how. So it's almost like giving them a little medicine of saying, hey, this is what it feels like when you're just not thinking about it. And guess what? Tomorrow you still go back and you do your thing and everything goes back to normal. You didn't miss anything. So it's almost like giving them aha moment, okay, wait a minute, it's possible. Because I'm telling you, I feel most people out there, most women that I see are they've forgotten that it even exists, that you can just be just
well, that's the other side, unfortunately, feminism has not helped us the way that it was supposed to.
Correct.
So yes, we are, we're able to have bank accounts, which, women couldn't a generation or two ago, and jobs, but we don't share the housework.
Correct.
with the husband or partner if there is one, and the joy and burden, but the extra work of raising a child or children is on us.
Absolutely.
So joining the workforce has just created this huge amount of stress because, you still want to put your kids first, and you still love your kids more than yourself, because that's how we, that's nature.
Wired.
Right. That's the hormones. We're done. But then you feel like you have to keep your job and you want to do as well as you can in your job. And then you have a household and errands and shopping and, food, cooking. It's just so much. And then, of course, you lose connection with your body and your pleasure because, you think that all of this should be on you. And I feel like, I feel like being a mother is the most extraordinary and difficult work anyone can do. Yes.
I agree.
and it should be rewarded. So I feel that, taking like the Andrew Yang idea, I feel that women who are mothers, unless they are, married to like millionaires or something, should all get a mother dividend. They should have a salary that is for you being a mom.
I agree.
So if you're not like completely married to your work or your career, and you can take the time to be a mother, the government pays you like $2,000, whatever, something average a month. So you can do this with honor and dignity
of being a mom.
And what's more valuable to our world than the next generation?
I agree with you.
So to me, like, instead of saying, okay, pre-K for everyone, and, sure, that'd be great, but why? Why are we trying to make women into men? We're trying to rob women of their womanhood.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And make them into more fake men wearing these fucking, like, pantsuits like Hillary. What is this bullshit?
Thank you for
hiding our feminine power.
Thank you for mentioning that.
And, like, copying the master.
Right.
And you cannot use the tools of the master to take down the master.
I agree with you.
By becoming fake men who will always be underpaid, we will never put an end to patriarchy.
Right.
I really feel, and I'm so glad you mentioned it, a lot of people don't understand this, but, do I feel feminists have done so much for me, but I feel like that's taken to another level where, why are we trying to be like men? Wait a minute. You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't we continue, like you said? And that this is what's happening. So I don't feel like we should push this feminism to another level of being, no, we are different. Men are different than women, and we have our beautiful feminine side, and we should really honor it, which takes a lot of time and practice and honor to do. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is important.
It takes time.
Because it is, now we're men and women. Who has time for that? I mean, literally.
And being a good mom takes time, as you know.
Extremely a lot of time. I mean, I was lucky enough to always be self-employed, and I've taken 2 years with my babies.
That's
so
great.
It's always been, I was fortunate enough. A lot of people are not to have the time. They have to go back to work after 2 or 3 months, which sucks.
And it's unpaid leave in America,
literally,
right?
They probably...
Unpaid leave.
It's Papua New Guinea and America
terrible.
that have unpaid leave. It's like, come on.
I was, fortunate enough because I had my own companies always that I was able to do this. And it was the most honorable time of my life, and enjoying being a mom and being there, and it being, sleepless nights and all that, and enjoying the raising of my children. So 1,000%.
Like, I remember there was this little scandal, feminist scandal, because Hillary was interviewed during the last campaign, so in 2016, by a very famous black feminist. I don't need to, name her.
Gotcha.
Who put the question to her. It was at the YMCA, and she kind of put the question as a criticism. And she said, on your Twitter handle, why do you have mother first and then like Secretary of State or First Lady? Your husband has president first. He doesn't even mention being a father. And it ended up with Hillary like apologizing about it. Like, she started off defending it, but it was such a criticism. And I feel that as a feminist, being a mom and being a single mom has by far been the hardest thing I've ever done. It's much more work than writing a book or 3 books.
Absolutely.
It's much more work than, making money, selling, dealing.
I agree.
Right. So yes, put mother first. But what we're doing is, like, instead of adjusting ourselves to fit into the male standards and patriarchy's standards, and that whole like lean in bullshit.
We're imprisoning ourselves. Yes. Why?
We are the center of everything. We as mothers, when we mother, we are the center of this whole thing. The rest is just phallic show-offs. Everything around us, like the brands, the Prada bags,
everything,
or whatever it is that we want to have, the fancy cars, are just peacocks, are just boys showing off their feathers so they can get like the best female to have their babies. I mean, when you look at it in the most
goes back to sex. It does. It really does.
Right.
It does. It goes back to sex.
Yeah. So all this money and, so that you're able to buy a boat and you're able to like have a private plane, or I don't know what people's dreams are, where you need more and more and more and more all the time. is for reasons that have very, very little to do with us.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yes.
If we could kind of like find our own center, and so helping women, when they to become mothers. Mm-hmm. Also, like all these, Christians who are like against abortion. You want to be against abortion, like pay motherhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then maybe they can keep their children.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But then going back to, the women in the workplace, right? And pushing for us to, the modern day feminists, pushing for equal pay, pushing for women's rights in the workplace, women at home. I do believe, first of all, that men should be stepping up more too, as far as being able to stay home or take, having to share that whole,
experience.
The experience of being a parent too, as far as, women who also don't want to be mothers that are in the workplace too, as far as being in your 20s or 30s, the more maternal stages, right? The ages that you're expected to have the children. Women in that age group, when they go for interviews, are often asked, oh, are you married? Do you have a partner? Do you have children? And that expectation of just, that motherly instinct that we have, that we're going to want to have children. Maybe not all women want to have children or to be a mother. And then that can.
But can I say something? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Women should choose. They don't have to be mothers. But very often women don't want to be mothers because of the financial, concerns. Because it's a big burden. Their career would suffer. My career, because I chose not to farm my kid out to caretakers. When my income when I became pregnant and I was unmarried, and chose to keep her. And I was in a very adult world. I had a sex advice column. I was publishing. I wrote for Spin magazine. I was a staff writer. I taught at the university. That all that income kind of went down by, I'm going to say 70%, because I just couldn't do all that stuff and have a child with me.
Baby, yeah.
And I'm not gonna, in my mind, because I have my own logic. Why keep my daughter and then send her out to strangers to raise,
so somebody else can raise her? Yeah,
who I don't know. I don't know their values. I don't know these women. They're from other cultures, so that I can go out there and continue doing what I was doing before. So what you're saying is exactly because the money is not there. We end up not having children because we're having successful careers, and I don't want to lose that. And also, people calculate the cost. It's cost me $500,000, my kid, from birth to now. She's 20. And, people,
and it's going to keep going.
I know,
24-year-old. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yes. And then they get married, and then this, and it just keeps going. There's an umpteen amount of money that you spend.
Yeah, right now is the most expensive because I'm paying tuition. So it's never been so hard.
Of course, tuition is,
But what if these jobs that we had, right? What if it didn't have to go away? What if they had more support for parents? What if they offered, so for example, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to give an example, they offer mothers, I don't know if they offer fathers, but either 3 months, 6 months, or a year off. And you can choose what you would like.
Yeah.
And it'll be paid leave. For the woman, and her job is not going to be given away,
jeopardized. Right.
Exactly, her job isn't going to be jeopardized. So what if these companies stepped up and offered us more? And for example, that's been found to not cost these companies a penny to have other people take on these roles while you're away.
But I'm not a big fan of corporate. I don't know. Maybe corporations.
Oh, me neither.
Yeah.
That's so why I do it.
Me neither.
That's why
I've been self-employed for a long time.
Right. Yeah. I think it should be the government. I don't think we should leave it up to
in Spain, for example,
greedy.
it's paid by the government.
Yeah, by the government. Exactly.
Yeah.
The fucking trillion some dollars that they threw away in Afghanistan and the other trillion that they threw away in Iraq, that would pay all the women in the country for new mothers.
Yes.
That's it. And
education,
it creates better children.
Yeah.
It creates, united family unit. And the other thing is the child in post-patriarchy. If we're moving out of patriarchy, And now with DNA testing, it's super simple to find out who's the father. So paternity is no longer like, so like hard to confirm.
Of course.
You don't need to like lock the woman up in the women's quarters and keep her there for life.
Right, forever.
And surround her with like eunuchs so that, if she has a baby, it's yours. So now, like, really, the children belong to the mother. If there is a father there, that's wonderful, and they're a couple, and they are both parents, and it's better for the children, and all of that. But why does the child have this dude's name? The guy came once. He fucking ejaculated once. He had a fucking orgasm.
Yes.
Right.
She went through a life change, a body change, 9 months, breastfeeding. Everything changes when you know that the hormones. You're not the same person
at all. Zero.
Those 9 months, and then the first 2 years, I breastfed 2 years. That whole time, hormonally, I was like somebody else.
Completely. Your hormones don't settle down.
You're like a mothership, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a huge, commitment that you make as a human that the male human doesn't make, and yet your baby is called after him and his people and his family. And it's like, I think it's insane. Well, now that we don't need the paternity, the paternity confirmed, the only reason we do it is with the assumption that like the father side is going to be the provider.
Right.
But it's no longer true. In most cases, you have to have 2 income families. Most people are just not wealthy enough to have the dad, pay for everything. So why is this naming still going on? It's very offensive to me personally, because it like implies ownership.
It does. It really does.
I wish our children would have their own first names and their own last names. But if we don't want to give them a new last name, it should be the mother's last name. But in my utopia,
right?
Because our last names are our father's last names, who theoretically owned us. I mean, it's just I would just kind of like rename them first name, last name, and then first name, last name, different, everything.
And
who
go
cares?
for it.
Yeah. Fuck the lineage.
Give them, fuck the lineage.
You're your own person.
Give them, exactly. Make them.
Yeah.
Give them the sense from the get-go that you're you.
That is them.
Fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, going back to, again, you see how the system is skewed.
Yeah.
So yes, women get alimony. So when the divorce happens, so it encourages divorce in a very backhanded way, if you think about it. If the couple has money, which is a small percentage of this society, smaller and smaller, but in the top percent, she will get paid for being a mom if she divorces.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how fucked up and sick it is. Because that's, how like the legal system is set up. And again, we're talking about, yes, divorce laws are the same all across, but, most average families, there isn't enough money for alimony to even exist, or he won't pay it, or it's unenforceable, or, So again, for the vast majority of like the working class, it doesn't really make a difference, and that monthly, salary to be a mom would be life-changing. But I feel that even for everyone, instead of, let's say, rewarding women when they're no longer part of the couple, you should, we should reward them when they are.
When they are, correct.
So anyway, we went a little off
How do we
topic.
get
Off tangent. You're having fun going to different tangents.
But thinking for yourself matters in all of this stuff. So, but to go back to practicing, sex is something that's like simple and healthy. Taking classes, right?
Education
is the easiest way to do it.
Definitely. I think.
And
Okay, so
YouTube and podcast.
Yeah,
but like in the class you
porn,
practice
maybe.
it. Yeah.
Well, in the class, so it can be theoretical or practical, right? And it's funny because when I introduce myself, or when people ask me what do I do, and I say, oh, I'm a sex educator, the main response I get is, oh, thank God, teenagers really need that. And I think, well, most of us didn't receive that as children
No one
or
receives
teenagers.
it. No one.
So how do you think I'm just talking to teenagers? Why do we think of these teenagers as these crazy horny kids that, are just exploring their sexuality? Yes, okay, maybe. But it extends beyond that. So we're kind of in our workshops, we give the classes as professionals. We're sexologists, we're psychologists, we're sex therapists, we're of course, sex enthusiasts as well. But it's a professional environment.
Most adults have no clue. They've lost their ways just by not even giving it time to explore their sexuality. And, we talked about it when we texted, dissolving sadness, and you're like, well, how can we do this? Well, one of the most natural ways is, releasing serotonin and endorphins. You feel better. Why don't we naturally go there? And however that is, just enjoying the time of naturally having that feeling in your body to make you feel better. People have just, they rather take an antidepressant or they rather go a different route than go into the most basic thing.
And then the antidepressants affect your sexual drive.
It's ridiculous. It makes you dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the worst thing ever. I'm so against any of the unnatural stuff at all, any of the pills.
But if you have to take it, it's okay to take the Viagra.
Of course, if you are
and
right.
it's okay to take the Cialis and just take whatever.
Your mental health is the most important. I want to say that mental health is as important or more important than your sexual health. Definitely.
And the thing about it is it piles on.
It's the same thing.
It really piles on because we're not taking the time. When we're not, and when you mention this, physically, chemically, if we're continuously there, our enzymes are not going to produce. They're going to produce cortisol. They're going to produce the stress. They're going to block a lot of the serotonin and endorphins and, all of these things that make us feel better. And there is natural ways of doing this and just taking the time.
Well, that's what you said in your when you just spoke before, which led us down the path of like equal rights and equal pay.
Yeah.
But and maternal pay. Yeah, it's like taking the time rather than being on automatic.
Right.
Taking the time.
And that's another thing that I feel has happened in the contemporary world, in the big tech world, is that things are going very fast. And so everyone feels that we're behind and it's like rush, catch up, figure out what like, oh my God, there are like 10 more new apps that I should download and join and, and
instant gratification.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Instant gratification. Instead of patience. Right. Yeah. And then also like education is so extremely, compartmentalized. So now people go to college to learn like that one thing.
Right.
Instead of get like a general education, which should include sexual education.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean just like in elementary. I mean, every step, even in college, sex education in college should be a requirement.
And we just started, Sex Academy just started another company called La Otra Educación, which means the other education. And we offer it for children in primary school, middle school, high school, up until college, teachers, parents, because it doesn't even just involve the kids that need the sex education. It's the parents. It's anyone who comes in contact with the child needs sex education too.
But the point is, it shouldn't have to be private. It should be done in public school.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it should be part of the basic curriculum.
Yeah.
And you can bring in, special sex ed people who teachers who that's what they specialize in. Instead now, like, the kids fall asleep, they show them like movies with like cartoons of genitals or something,
or the miracle
and the kids
of
are
life.
like going like
Or
they're on their phone or no one understands anything. Like, it should be like this conversation,
Definitely.
but they should be hearing it from age 5 or 6 until they graduate college. All of those years that are so important, and we as a society have access to those minds that are being formed.
I agree.
Instead of waiting for people to like hit a wall and then look for the sex academy or look for a Reiki practitioner or somebody who'll put them under in hypnosis, to be healed.
I agree with you. Let's prevent it. Let's get out of the way.
Maybe not have so much to heal. if we are,
I agree with you. Absolutely.
Right?
This is where we're starting all this. And believe it or not, I'm seeing a lot of young kids.
Really?
Like 6, 7, 8. A lot of teenagers are turmoil right now.
Oh, yeah.
Turmoil.
Teenagers, it's terrible.
It is the worst timing right now in the world. And they are, from everything, sexually frustrated to, they just feel like they don't belong in this world at all. And because we're not taking the time. And it ties into everything. Not enough time at home. Not enough time. Do you understand what I'm not... So it goes back to everything, and they're completely lost. Of course, they're gonna, be off-centered. I agree with you, and I'm pushing.
So instead of like teaching them, one more math class or I don't know, history of like America's,
like whatever, whenever it's gonna get recalled and used in your life,
right? Which they forget.
Correct. You're never gonna use it. Yeah.
There is so much unnecessary stuff in our education, in our curriculums. That are not even broad-minded. Like, it's not like they're learning philosophy. It's not like they're learning the classics. It's not like they're learning how to think for themselves.
Right.
No, it's just like, intel, like just information that they're supposed to memorize and retain briefly, take a test and forget.
I agree with you.
So, I definitely, we should have sex education from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And that's easier than, educating the parents matters a lot, and that is unfortunately self-education. So also, when, if you're about to be a parent, try to be conscious, try to not become your mother or your father.
Correct.
Which is easier said than done because it's very overwhelming. You have to deal with all the practical things and the screaming and they give me and then I need. And, your life becomes so much more demanding. And so anything you can do quickly, you do to get it out of the way.
Right.
So the stuff that's most important is the stuff that we do thoughtlessly, the way that our parents did them to us.
Yep.
Because, so it's basically, no, don't do that. And it's not what we believe in. It's just what we somehow remember. All of a sudden, we're having like these memories of like how our parents talk to us, and we repeat it because we're in a rush, like you say.
Right.
So finding consciousness is much more important than making, an extra like whatever $500 a week.
Exactly.
And getting our priorities clear.
Getting our priorities straight.
And if that means like moving back to nature.
1,000%.
Right?
I feel like you were saying all of
populating rural America, so it's not so fucking Republican. That would be okay.
Praise God, yes.
It's just, going back into, like you said, into nature, into you, into figuring out. And I believe I'm actually working on a couple of projects, and I volunteer in a lot of high schools where I do go there, and I spend a lot of time talking about these real subjects that nobody, talks about, and I think we need to have a meditation class. I think we need to have a reality of how to deal when you cope, how to deal when when parents are pushing you one way and you feel like it's not another way. Okay, and all of these things are real, and it's our generations. This is our future, and nobody wants to take the time because it's just like you say, whatever, moving on, and it's just it irks me, like it irks my soul. Like we need to do something about it. If we don't do things like this podcast and things, just talk about it and push and do it, who else is going to do it? It's incredible.
And then our entertainment is like mind numbing and soul numbing.
Incredibly numbing and just ridiculous.
Yeah. So all the the big media is only interested in that. Corporations want to make profit, so we have we're bombarded by ads that compel us to just make more money to buy more stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
To make us feel bad about ourselves, so we can do more things, and it's just how and it's. The beautiful part is that we're made with everything we need, literally, every one of us.
And like you said earlier, it's that's seeking that constant instant gratification instead of taking that time for yourself to learn something new, to have that conversation that might help you get through that day, right? Like you were saying, teenagers feel lost, people feel lost. There's that expectation that as when you're an adult, you're going to figure it out. You're going to know everything's going to be fine. And as you get older, you realize we don't figure it out. It's all
Holy
just like
crap.
pretending like you've got it all together.
Seriously.
And I'm sick of people pretending that everything is okay.
There's a lot of shit. You have no idea how many people come to me and they're like, okay, talk to me. I'm lost. I'm 50 years old. Yes. And what have I done? And I'm like, okay, like
you've made it to 50.
You made it to 50, and we're not.
What do you know?
And I understand that, like, yes, we evolve and we change our lives, and we're evolving, all the time. But these people are like, I have no idea. I'm like, well, are you happy with your marriage? No. Are you happy with this? No. Are you? Okay, so we have to read. Why? Because they follow this path of like, this is what it is. This is what feels safe. This is what has been taught to me. And here they are, miserable. And these are people that are well off. And there's there's a range of everything. But people that you would think, okay, you have everything. You have money, you have this, you have, they're miserable inside. Why? Because and it starts from here. When we're young, when we're understanding what is it that the path that we need to take. It is imperative to make this movement. It is just, I feel imperative.
I agree with you.
Imperative to do this.
Yeah. And, feeding the ego and not feeding the soul.
Correct.
Or the spirit creates this imbalance where, you've achieved, like you say, with people who are wealthy or whatever, healthy and wealthy. And, you've achieved the stuff that your ego has wanted and you're hollow and sad, because you haven't fed your truth.
Your soul.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it's a huge imperative that we do more of this, more of truth, more honesty, more vulnerability, more out there, more conversation, acceptance of what your opinions are, beautiful, and follow that encouragement. So people can know, like, okay, I'm not alone. I feel this way. I'm think this way. Let me go this route. Beautiful. Go do it.
Yeah. And ask yourself questions for yourself, like rather than assuming that this is the way things are and I'll do them because that's the way things are, and I'm like a good person and I do what everybody does. Ask yourself what serves you or what you think is appropriate or what would make sense for you. Kind of like embrace the fact that you're different. I think that it's, and this whole movement with like, non-gender binary and trans and all of that for me is extremely positive because it's just showing us that there is a huge spectrum.
Yes.
And we don't necessarily have to fit in any of that, but it just tells us that we don't need to fit in, So like, even, for example, like, the gender reveal thing.
Oh my God, I hate that.
Know, right?
God, it's awful.
Like, the little person isn't born yet. And already, like, completely stereotyped.
Okay, sex reveal, great.
Yeah,
it's a boy
sex
or girl.
reveal is fine, but
That's
gender
fine.
reveal, and then you get, you expect like to be inundated with like pink for the girl and blue
Forever.
for the boy. Come on,
Oh my gosh, it's so
and
bad.
then and then it begins like from when
you're not even
the human is in the exactly.
It's insane.
Yeah,
your identity is your first identity is going to be
right. It's censored already.
Your gender is already it's revealed. It's out there, and we all know you're gonna get pink everything
and dolls, and you're gonna be talked down to. And
exactly. And you're not gonna have equal pay, and you're
we already know you're gonna be sweetie, in that little girl voice that you don't talk to boys with, and oh my God, it's just like
oh my gosh. And then also when we talk about sexual orientation, for example, how many times do we talk to little boys and be like, oh, is that your little girlfriend over there? Or things like that. We're already, this is where it begins. We start instilling these things.
Oh yeah, it begins so early. Yeah, it's crazy.
So early.
Yeah.
And now before they're even born.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This is great.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like take a moment, take the time, to like think before you do pretty much everything. If you can, get in that space. And it's harder. It's easy for us to sit here and say it.
Oh yeah.
Listen, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Yes, it's hard for anyone. It's the most enlightened
for
people that
us.
I've met. All of us. But you know what? It's taking more time than normal. And are you gonna mess up and fuck up? Yes. But you know what? You need to go back and be like, all right, let's go back next day and let's start doing it again.
Yeah, we all do things
and acknowledge and to do it because you're human. You're gonna have bad and good days. You're gonna mess up. You're gonna do it. But understanding the big picture of, wait a minute, am I doing this because I feel bad, or am I doing this because I really want to, regardless of who it is? Mom, dad, your daughter, your son.
Sometimes
matter.
we
really
all have
honoring.
like little trigger points from our childhood or whatever. And sometimes like one of your triggers gets pushed and you definitely do not think and you just kind of like
1,000%
reactive.
You're human.
You get very reactive. But acknowledging that and not acknowledging that so you can feel guilty and be guilt-tripped.
Correct.
But so you can like re-examine it. And then handle it in a way that's like...
I agree with you 1,000%.
That's truer to who you are.
Correct.
Rather than like, early childhood triggers that are not something in your
1,000%.
control. Yeah. Right? So it's okay to revisit, and it's okay to err so long as we know it, like becoming conscious of the way we live, becoming conscious of all the little tiny choices we make, instead of like kind of like rushing through life. I think it's like how we change from whatever, sadness, loss, anxiety, to happiness.
Huge transformation.
And nirvana and bliss,
Huge transformation.
And like the Buddha, notably, abandoned his family and abandoned the palace and went and sat out under the banyan tree and became enlightened, right? Well, we can't all do that because we gotta also live. So that's
practically,
right. So in practical terms, you have to find that fine line between speaking your truth and being honest and being conscious, and also understanding the language of the culture and of the others, and speaking that and finding a place for both.
Absolutely.
But finding the marriage of the two is the way to reach as many people as possible, and the people who are not exposed to this are the people we want to reach. So that's why, like in the Sex Academy, you're doing so much more talking, and explaining and sharing and saying, well, we're professionals, and rather than like, let's get in a circle naked and put things inside you and see how it feels, which is more like the 60s way, but it didn't take in a general in the general culture.
I think the reason why we take a more professional approach and stuff like that, I mean, our topics are not considered all of a sudden super vanilla all the time, right? We do like BDSM and shibari and swinging and stuff. We do push the boundaries as far as what's considered socially acceptable, and a lot of people feel like they don't have to pay for education.
Right, exactly.
I wish they wouldn't have to. I wish it could be taught by the schools, by the government. But hopefully we'll get there one day.
We're gonna get there.
We'll
get there. Listen, here we are. One day, making it one at a time.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah to that. That's true. That's
thank you for coming.
Thank
you so much. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
So Maya, Avril, and everyone out there, thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me as your sex whisperer. And until next week, speak sex. If I could make love incessantly, I would be God.